Welcome to Tech for Good Made Easy. I'm your host, Randy Paynter, and today I'm going to walk through how nonprofit professionals can use ChatGPT. We'll start with the basics, all the way to some advanced hacks even regular users of ChatGPT probably don't know about. To make this practical and easy to follow along, we're going to use ChatGPT to write and optimize a grant proposal. But I promise, these same techniques will be helpful no matter what type of content you create. This lesson will help you create better content faster, no matter whether you're writing an email, a report, a book, ad copy, or a PowerPoint presentation. As I promised previously in the Tech for Good Made Easy overview video, I'm going to keep this intro short, and so I'm going to jump right into how to get started. So, ChatGPT, what exactly is it good for, and how do you get started? I like to think of ChatGPT as an incredibly smart personal assistant. You can ask it pretty much any question, and it will provide a thoughtful, intelligent response. But you may wonder, why do I need that when I have Google in my brain? Lots of reasons, but probably the best way to answer that is to actually start using it, as one of the greatest advances with ChatGPT is how easy it is to start using. So I encourage you to go to https://chat.openai.com, put this video on pause, and create an account or sign in if you already have one. Once you have an account, you'll end up on a page that looks something like this. Just kidding, but the ChatGPT interface is almost as friendly and inviting. No doubt you've been scarred over the years by asking one of your colleagues or family members for help, but trust me, ChatGPT does not judge and is always friendly and helpful. And frankly, it's probably smarter than those people anyway. So don't be afraid to start with a really basic question. And if you want to follow along at home and put this video on pause as needed, that would be great. I'm going to type, I work at a nonprofit organization. What are 10 ways that ChatGPT can help me? Cool. So it tells us 10 ways it can help us. It can help with research and information gathering, grant writing, communications, training and onboarding, event planning, etc. As you'll notice, the first word in ChatGPT is chat. So unlike Google, where you're going to do one-off searches, with ChatGPT, you can carry on a conversation. In other words, it remembers your previous exchanges and then uses those insights to inform its answers. So let's continue on this thread. Type, tell me more about number 2, i.e. specifically how it can help with grant writing. As you can see, I didn't say, tell me more about how ChatGPT can help with grant writing. I said, tell me more about number 2, and it knew from the previous response that I was referring to grant writing. If you tried that with Google, it would respond with websites that talk about the phrase, tell me more about number 2. But with ChatGPT, you're going to communicate with it like you'd talk with a really smart personal assistant. So we started with a really basic question and then drilled down to something more specific. I find that taking this iterative approach is often the easiest. If I start with a general question, the answer often helps me to tighten up my subsequent questions so I can then dig in for more detail. I've actually seen several people write entire books with ChatGPT using this technique. They started by telling ChatGPT the topic they were interested in and asking it for ideas of themes that could make a good book. They then ask it to write a list of chapters and then ask it to write each chapter. It may sound crazy, but it works amazingly well. Quick tip, if you're going to ask it to write something lengthy, you'll need to use this approach as it has limits on the amount of text it will produce with any request. So let's keep going with the grant proposal example. Let's have it come up with a draft grant proposal for a fictitious nonprofit organization I'm going to call Help the Children of East Timor. To do that, let's start with an outline to make sure we're on the right path. So I'm going to type, please draft an outline for a grant proposal for a nonprofit organization called Help the Children of East Timor, which is focused on providing education to underprivileged children. The goal will be to raise $100,000. Awesome. I'm not going to read this all out here, but you can see that it came up with a really solid outline, including a cover letter, an executive summary, an introduction, a needs statement, a project description, a budget, beneficiary testimonials and stories, etc. A couple of quick notes for those of you following along at home, which I strongly encourage you to do. First, you are likely to get a similar but different answer versus what I'm seeing. I won't go into the details of why that is, but somewhat like a human brain, ChatGPT may answer slightly differently each time it's asked a question. Second, I'm using the paid version GPT 4.0. It's $20 a month and far superior to the free version ChatGPT 3.5. I highly encourage you to upgrade. I have no financial incentive in telling you that, but I can promise you GPT 4.0 is far better than GPT 3.5. It also unlocks access to GPT plugins, which add really important functionality, and we'll be talking about that in future episodes. There are other free services out there. For example, Google has released Bard, and coming later this year, they'll launch Gemini. And you may have heard that Meta or Facebook has released their version called Llama, but none of the currently available chat services are as good as GPT-4. So I really encourage you to upgrade to GPT 4.0. If a better system launches in the future, you can cancel your subscription, but for now, this is the way to go. Okay, let's get back to our grant writing example. It gave us an outline, and now let's have it write the introduction. I'll type, write the introduction. I'm not going to read the entire introduction here, but check this out. East Timor, or Timor-Leste, is a nation of young hopes, resilient spirits, and dreams that sparkle in the eyes of its youth. Yet beneath the optimism lies a challenging reality. Many of East Timor's children grapple with limited educational opportunities, a remnant of its tumultuous past and socioeconomic challenges. In such a landscape, Help the Children of East Timor emerged as a beacon of hope. I mean, that's pretty amazing. I gave it very little information to go on, but ChatGPT seems to know that the introduction should be inspiring, and it puts the project in context. It knows that East Timor had a history of violent conflict. It gained independence from Indonesia about 20 years ago, and it alludes to the dreams and potential of its youth. Okay, so how is it doing this? I'm not going to go into a deep dive on the technology here, but I do want to address one common misperception. Some people think that because ChatGPT has consumed a huge amount of information from websites around the world, that it's now basically using some sort of a grant proposal template and plugging in keywords. It's not actually doing that. I know this sounds hard to believe, but it basically understands what I'm asking it at a more conceptual level, which makes it a lot more powerful than some sort of super ad-libs template. I realize I'm anthropomorphizing an algorithm here, but I think that's actually a helpful way to understand how these LLMs, or large language models, are different from previous computer-generated structured content we're used to seeing. Just to drive home that point that it's not using some sort of grant proposal template, let's use a very silly example. Let's now ask it to write this proposal in the style of Dr. Seuss. I can almost guarantee that no one has ever written a grant proposal introduction in the style of Dr. Seuss, but ChatGPT understands what I'm talking about at a conceptual level and combines these concepts to produce this output. And look, that's pretty clever. Jumping to the last stanza. Now in this tale of dreams and a goal not so far, we wish for 100,000 to raise the bar. Come hop on this journey of dreams big and small, for with your kind help we can surely teach all. I don't know, maybe someone should write their grant proposal in the style of Dr. Seuss. To be clear, that's not just a neat party trick. That's unbelievable power the world has never seen before. Replace in the style of Dr. Seuss with in the style of Martin Luther King Jr., or Steve Jobs, or the Sierra Club, or using a strong quantitative framework, or using a great sense of urgency, or using FOMO, or using social proof, or write it in a bullet point format, or using HTML, or in Spanish. And you can begin to understand how powerful this is. In other words, there's an unlimited number of ways you can modify your content in ways you have never been able to do previously. It's truly mind-blowing. You have the most intelligent personal assistant in the world here to help with whatever you want to accomplish. I'm going to take a little tangent here to tell you a story because I think it's important to understand a bit more about how ChatGPT works so you know how to get the most out of it. I've heard some people say that while ChatGPT has analyzed a huge amount of data, it's not really producing anything creative and new. It's just regurgitating the average of a whole lot of patterns it's seen out there. Let me push back on that. You've probably heard that IBM created an AI system called Deep Blue that was able to beat the world chess champion Garry Kasparov in 1997. Well, in 2016, Google then created their own version called AlphaGo to play the game of Go. Go has traditionally been played in East Asia and is considered a much more complex game for computers to play versus chess, as winning usually involves a lot of intuition and creativity. So they trained the model for a couple of months by feeding it all the known moves from games played by the best players in the world, and then they had it play against itself many times to learn how to win. And eventually it was able to beat Lee Sedol, the reigning Go champion. Well, the story doesn't end there. Google then built a new AI called AlphaGo Zero. But they didn't tell it the rules. They didn't feed it any previous examples of moves or games. It basically started with zero knowledge. They simply had it start making moves, and when it randomly scored, it would get a point. After just 3 days of training, they had AlphaGo Zero play the original AlphaGo, and it crushed the original 100-0. It turns out with this massive trial and error approach, without having any examples of moves or knowledge of the rules, it was able to discover even better strategy that no one had ever tried before. And this is why I tell you the story. These new AI models on which ChatGPT is built are insanely good at finding the deep connections between concepts. So ChatGPT isn't just the average of whatever has been done before. It's actually able to find new connections between concepts that none of us has probably ever thought about before. It's controversial to call that creativity, but it sure looks a lot like that to me. So I encourage you to give it a whirl and unleash your creativity. Experiment, and I think you'll be amazed at what you can accomplish using it as your personal assistant. Okay, back to our example of the grant proposal for our fictitious nonprofit Help the Children of East Timor. Let's say you think the text needs a bit more specificity in terms of why, in particular, East Timor needs this help. So I'm going to type, please rewrite the introduction, adding 3 reasons why East Timor is in particular need of this support. And there you go. It's added 3 reasons. Obviously, this is a very generic example, and you can ask it to craft a much more custom draft for your specific needs. But hopefully what you can see from this really simplistic example is that you can talk to it like you talk to a human, and it's remarkably good at understanding what you mean. I find ChatGPT's ability to understand human language truly incredible, both in terms of how it understands the broader context of a question, in other words, what I meant by tell me more about number 2, and then also how it's able to respond in a way that a really smart person might respond. You're still going to want to edit it yourself, but it gives you a huge head start. Quick tip. To get the best results, stick to one topic per session or conversation. If you're using ChatGPT for grant writing and then decide to ask it to craft a social media campaign, you're going to want to start a new session or conversation. Just go back to the top left of your screen and you'll see this little box-like icon. Click on that to open the sidebar, then click on New Chat at the top to start a new conversation. Each conversation uses the content from that specific discussion to inform subsequent answers. So switching topics mid-conversation may confuse it. So let's now talk about what else ChatGPT is good for and how to get the most out of it. Drafts. First off, as you can see from the initial example, it's really helpful at creating drafts. People are calling this solving the blank page problem. You know, when you're staring at that blank page trying to figure out how to get started, whether you're trying to write an email, a report, a book, an outline, a survey, a quiz, a poll, using ChatGPT gives you an amazing head start. Whatever it writes is probably not going to be perfect, and you should always fact check it, but it can write an amazingly good first draft. Second, brainstorming. Similarly, ChatGPT is amazing at brainstorming. Let's say you want help coming up with a title for the grant proposal. So I'm going to type, provide 10 creative and eye-catching ideas for titles. These are pretty good. It provides a range of options that do a good job of capturing the essence of the grant proposal. Brighter Tomorrow, Empowering East Timor's Future. Or check out number 4, Pages of Promise, Rewriting East Timor's Education Narrative. That's pretty clever. Asking ChatGPT for help with titles is also a great thing to do with email newsletters. Throw your newsletter text into ChatGPT and ask it to come up with 10 subject lines for an email newsletter. If you tell it who your target audience is, it will craft the titles with that in mind. Next, collaborator. The more you use ChatGPT, I suspect the more you'll find it's a really good collaborator. As I mentioned earlier, it's like a super smart assistant who can help with almost any task you ask of it. Most people are using ChatGPT these days for content creation. And while it's good at creating drafts, I personally think it may even be better at revisions. Let's go back to the introduction that it wrote for us and ask it to give it a greater sense of urgency. I'll type, give it a greater sense of urgency. Nice. So it now uses words like stands on a precipice and time sensitive. So you can see it understands exactly what I meant and it did it. You're no doubt going to want to tweak some of this language, but it gives you a really powerful start. Now, let's say you want to make the introduction more concise. I'll simply type, make this more concise. There we go. So it made it much more concise while also retaining the sense of urgency I asked for previously. Here's one more idea that I like that I haven't heard many people doing. Ask it to be a cynic. I find this to be particularly helpful for things like social media posts. You know, there's always some troll or many trolls that just love to poke holes in what you post. So let's type, what are 3 things a cynic may say about this? Okay, fair enough. Some may think it now overstates the urgency and doesn't sufficiently address efficiency concerns, and perhaps the $100,000 ask isn't enough to make this a sustainable program. Maybe the cynic has some valid concerns. But now, unlike those haters who just criticize, we're going to turn it right back around on ChatGPT. So I'm going to type, please rewrite to address these concerns. Nice. So obviously I haven't told it any details at all, so its ability to address those concerns is limited, but it has created a section for each and provides some language that could help to address those concerns. I find you can do lots of loops like this to essentially get a second or third set of eyes on it from a variety of angles, and have it then immediately address any issues it may identify. You can ask it to review your work from the perspective of someone focused on financial concerns, or maybe with a particular sensitivity to issues related to DEI, all sorts of possibilities. One last idea I'll mention while we're talking about using ChatGPT as a collaborator. If you ever get stuck, just ask ChatGPT for help on pretty much any topic. If you can't figure out how to do something on your computer, ask ChatGPT. If you don't understand the implications of some medical terms, ask ChatGPT. If you don't know how to do something on an Excel spreadsheet, just ask ChatGPT. If you are tenacious and willing to keep asking for help, ChatGPT can walk you through solving pretty much any situation where you're getting stuck. As you can see, there's an incredible array of ways you can use ChatGPT. If you're looking for facts, I'd stick with Google. But if you're looking for a thought partner and collaborator, ChatGPT is the way to go. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. But I'm going to stop there, as my goal for this first video is simply to help you get started. Test the waters a bit and see the potential for how this might be able to help you save a lot of time, improve the quality of your outputs, and maybe save a lot of money. Next steps. First, if you didn't stop the video to test ChatGPT, I highly encourage you to do that right now while it's fresh in your mind. Second, upgrade to GPT-4, which is the paid version I was using in the demos today. GPT-4 also gives you access to plugins, which we'll use a lot in future episodes. So this is where the truly mind-blowing stuff is going to happen. So upgrade to get access to GPT-4 and plugins, and I'll see you next time. If you like this episode, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe and let your colleagues know. If you have comments or questions or ideas for future episodes, you can DM me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Paynter, that's Paynter with a Y, and or please post your comments below. We're just getting started and want to hear your feedback to make sure you're getting a lot of value out of this. Thank you and have an amazing day.